Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
William Othello Adams, Jr., Eddie Hugh Allen, William Lee Anderson, Jesse James Armwood, Roland Randolph Austin, Nicola Babbage, Thomas Edward Baglini, Donald Allen Baker, William Joseph Ballinger, Fideli Joseph Bastarac, Donald Edward Beatty, Christopher James Bell, Robert Trame Bensberg, Gordon Byron Blackwood, Thomas Robert Bliss, Roy Robert Booth, Danny Ward Bowers, Bradley Bowling, William Francis Bryce Jr., Larry James Burkhart, Thomas Allen Burkhart, Larry Anthony Caravetta, Paul Dean Carter, Robert Henry Carter Jr., Albert J. Cartledge III, Eugene William Caswell, Alfonso Linwood L. Chavez, James Woodford Clark, Charles Thomas Coates, Scott Edward Cochran, David John Combs, Richard Lee Cox, Joseph William Crary, Ralph Heman Crowley, James Linnell Cummings, Robert Blaine Daniels, Alfredo Davila, Peter Evan Day, Gary Clifton Eaton, John Paul Edwards, James Francis Ellis, Willie Edward Elzenberg, Guy Bernard Efland Jr., Charles Dwayne Irvin, Michael James Fallon, Gary Carl Fassel, Charles Clinton Fleek, Charles Grady Floyd, Francis Ivan Foyles, Jerry Foy, James Patrick Francis, Willie Lee Freeman, Tom Galvez, Frank William Garoppolo, Michael Eugene Gerber, Keith Edward Gibson, Larry L. Gore, Thomas Hill Goodman Jr., Ralph Shoup Gorton III, Philo Derrick Grant III, John William Grazer, Gary Lee Grubbs, Gary Richard Guest, Raymond Ramirez Gutierrez,
Sherry Joe Hadley, John Lewis Harley, Donnie Ray Harley, Henry Richard Hausman Jr., James Hebert III, Francis Joe Hefner, Kenneth Raymond Hellman, Ronald Wayne Herron, James Philip Hickey, Thomas Hill, Lee Edward Himbaugh, Carlton Harvey Hood, Reuben Lee Horton, David James Hughes, Robert Douglas Jenkins, Henry Alston Johnson, Garland Jones, Dennis Joseph Keenan, George Richard Keller, John Ward Kirchner, Gary Dean Klein, Thomas William Nucky, Patrick Arthur Layton, Glenn Hung Nhin Lee, John Richard Lindell, Matthew T. Lozano Jr., Michael Eugene Ludwig, Doyle Wilmer Lynn, Michael Robert Maidens, Robert Gary Marks, Edward Arthur Matthews, Alan Lewis Matt, Billy Joe McCarty, Timothy Patrick McGuire, James Daniel McKelvey, William James McNamara, Frank Martin Mebbs, Vernell Henry Miller Jr., Billy Ray Moffett, Donald Wayne Myers, Thomas Wayne Myers, Thomas Harold Narini, Frank Theodore Nevedomsky, Thomas David Niedermeyer, Bernard J. Osterberg Jr., Wayne Allen Painter, Alan Hugh Parks, Franklin Danny Pete Jr., Jimmy Wayne Phipps, Robert Ardell Pitts, Anthony George Pryor, Richard Monroe Pruitt, Joseph Lewis Ropp, Earl Donald Reed, Merrill Dale Reich Jr., Robert David Rhodes, Herbert A. Ripka, Larry Allen Rippey, Hector Rivera Colon, Cordell Bruce Rogers, Kenneth Ray Rucker, Scott Bruce Salter, Gail Jean Sanderson, Isaac Sapp,
Ollie Leslie Sauls Jr., Donald Young Scarberry, Charles Duane Schopflin, Gary James Scott, William Arthur Sangle, Kenneth Marion Seward, Carl Howard Sexton Jr., Gary Christopher Schaefer, Melvin Richard Simpson, George Robert Smiley, Kenneth William Smith, James Edward Smith, George Ramiro Sosa, Conrad Andrew Sova, Patrick Matthew Steele, Andrew Paul Susi, Philip Charles Taylor, David Lee Tesmer, Charles John Treweek, Claude Richard Van Ondel, Jerry Wayne Van de Vender, Arthur Vernon Vigil, Ronald Ray Wallace, Thomas Jerry Walters, Carl Jean Ward, Harold James Wormsley, Charles Gaffius Warsing, Donald Lee White, Sylvian Larry White, William Joseph White Jr., Robert Clyde Yates, Ricardo Ybarra, Wayne Leroy Yinger Jr., John Curtis Young.